Hello and welcome to Love, Dating, and Relationships for Spiritual Women. I'm your host, Julie Grimm, and I'm here with Zhanna Lee. Zhanna is a holistic sex and intimacy coach who supports both couples and individuals in their intimacy and sexuality. So Zhanna, so excited to have you on today. Thanks for joining.
I'm sorry, I missed something because of the recording. Can you repeat, Julie?
Yeah, sure. Here, let's start all over again.
I think I lost you. Yes, I need to block my
Notifications.
Yes, because that's what happened. The moment you started talking, yeah.
Well, it's
Sorry.
good. Better sooner rather than later, actually.
Yeah.
So, okay, so this is for me to edit.
Yeah.
Welcome to Love, Dating, and Relationships. I'm your host, Julie Grimm. I'm a guide and healer in the Modern Mystery School, and I'm here today with Zhanna Lee. Zhanna is a holistic sex and intimacy coach, and I'm so excited to have her on the show. So thanks for joining, Zhanna.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here with you.
Yeah,
Julie.
So I was telling Zhanna before we did this recording that my first exposure to like sex advice, even relationship advice, came through Cosmopolitan magazine, which is probably true for a lot of people if they're, kind of around my age. And I remember the advice. I thought that it was good advice at the time because it's all that I had, but it was just really not to the point. Let me put it that way. It does not actually get to intimacy. And that's why I think what Zhanna does is so important. So, for example, some of the advice that I remember is like, oh, if you want to keep a guy, get a donut and like put it around him and then eat the donut. I'm not kidding. Like 16 years old, I'm reading this magazine and it's like 42 ways to please a guy. And one of them involves a donut. The next one involves like taking ice and putting it all over his body and all these kind of crazy things. And I'm thinking, yes, that must be it. That's the key to a healthy sex life and intimacy.
Oh my God. It makes me laugh and terrified at the same time. I just went to New York and I visited the Museum of Sex. And believe it or not, that is still the same. The advices of Cosmopolitan are all there. It was quite a shock for me.
Yeah, but I guess that you somehow didn't get that education, or maybe you were ahead of your time or something, that you didn't get indoctrinated in that same way.
Oh, believe me, I wasn't. I grew up in a country, the former Soviet Union, where there were no sex. One of the leaders said it on the TV. There is no sex in Soviet Union. So it was suppressed. And what I started noticing eventually, that it's quite similar to what many people who grew up strictly religious, or with a Catholic background, also experienced. So for one reason or another, there was suppression and there were just no conversation about sex. Right. So that's for me, that's what actually made me curious eventually, and started to explore it. And just like you, first those advices that can be fun, but has nothing to do with healthy and adult relationship and intimacy
Yeah,
and sex.
it's interesting because I do on Instagram, I follow different accounts, and it's not to put any of these accounts down. I think that there's a time and place for all different types of sex advice, but even like the adult version of the Cosmo now, it's always like, so just whip them, like handcuff your partner. That's going to solve your intimacy issues, which to say it could be fun, but is it going to solve the deeper root that's beneath it? And I think that's a lot of the work that you get to is
Yeah.
what's the deeper work beneath that. Sure, put a donut on them or whip them or whatever if you want to. But like if this deeper aspect isn't really there, what good is it going to do?
Yes, and that's what the most people are confused about. They confused sex with just a physical part, a physical aspect. Um, Body is body. You can create pleasure in a body, but to connect on a both emotional level and a physical level, that requires some skills. And yes, some people are kinky. And for some people, to have more pleasure means to put a donut on a penis. Or, that can be a part, or play with ice. But it's good to know that. Well, and also, I'm not going to say that it won't lead to more connection, though it will be playful connection if both people enjoy it. Nothing's wrong with that. Though in most cases, when we have only this option, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And from my perspective, to be playful like that and to be silly like that, deeper connection is a pre-requirement. It's not where we start. It's what we. It comes from abundance when we already safe in our relationship, when we already explored our desires, our pleasure. And if this is something that generally makes you excited, great. But you don't start with that. Does it make sense?
It makes so much sense to me. Yep. It's funny because I would read those accounts now, many years later, not being 16 anymore, different level advice, but I'd still go, I don't think that's it. I don't think that's it. And that's exactly I think you hit the nail on the head that it's the safety, creating that initial space is the thing. And I'm curious, so what do people come to you? What sorts of issues are they encountering when they might seek you out? What do you see in people? Is it that lack of safety that you're talking about, a lack of intimacy?
I would say it's a lack of skills and knowledge how to create it. Many people, many couples that come to me, they love each other. They do all this kinky stuff together sometimes, right? And they're surprised that it doesn't lead to deeper connection. And then they kind of stuck with having to separate their emotional love and what they associate with how sex should be, which is physical pleasure, maybe a little bit of playfulness, fun, but it's almost it's different realities, and there is almost no connection. So what happens eventually, one of the partners, sometimes it's a woman, sometimes it's a man, they start feeling depleted. They not they don't feel like having sex anymore. So and that is the most common reason why people come to me, is when there is a uneven desire in relationship, or there is a desire but there is something on the way. When they try, it just doesn't work, so they both frustrated, they both want to connect, but somehow it's just not happening. So what I do as an intimacy coach, I am sex and intimacy coach coming from a tantric perspective. And Tantra is a huge topic, fascinating topic. Really, something that, but it's something that actually has tools. The Tantric approach has tools how to connect those two, how to create emotional, how to bring emotional love or even spiritual love. Traditionally, that was also the aspect into the love making. So
It's huge
Mm.
what you're saying. I mean, it's
Yeah,
huge. What's also occurring
I
to
still
me,
get goosebumps talking about it.
it's huge. I think it's what so many people are looking for, not knowing that that's what they're looking for when they seek out the cosmosex advice, just use a donut or an ice cube, or even being very kinky. Not to say that that can't be a natural, like you said, overflow, but
Yeah.
if we go to that as like the band-aid solution for something that actually stems from these other aspects that you're talking about, or what we want is that spiritual connection, but we're just trying to get it through role play, we're going to be
People
unsatisfied.
people hide under those. People hide under behind the kinky stuff. They hide behind the being overly physical, sexual, and not necessarily realizing that even. It's just the sexual desire it's a part of life. It's a part of healthy human, right? So it needs to be expressed. Uh, but to expose yourself on a deeper level, that is very vulnerable act. So naturally we not it's not even about how, it's even about getting yourself into that position where I can say, yes, I want to be with this person and be present and relax and have an intention to relax and open. Even hearing that for some women, it's a triggering, it's scary. And men, uh, but with women, it's especially deep, and there is a energetic reason for that when it comes to sexuality.
It's so when you're talking, I'm thinking about how I don't know if you felt this way or people that you've worked with felt this way, but I've certainly had this thought before, which is like, oh, it should come naturally, or like
Mm.
if you're in a loving relationship, it should just happen, or it should just be part of it. And what I'm hearing is like, no. It can be a part of it, but that doesn't mean it happens naturally. Or doesn't mean that we're naturally gifted at
Mm.
learning how to bring this about, even if there is that foundation of a deep and loving connection.
Well, what is natural? Yes, we all have some instinctual desires, but if you think of natural, and you on it, and that's exactly what's happening. That's what prevents people to even reach out to an intimacy expert, even start learning themselves, though it's difficult to filter all the information, as you said about the what's out there. But to start learning, or to even, you have to overcome that mindset that things has to happen naturally. Think about it. What is natural is sex for creating babies, right? That's what natural. For that, women don't have to feel pleasure. It's a physical act. It to get pregnant. Women not necessarily need pleasure. The nature doesn't need her to have pleasure. Yes, it's an additional um, element. Um, for it's we are very different by design. The female sexuality, female body, and male body. And what I love about Tantra, we approach it in a tantric practices. We approach it more from energetic way, energetic position. Yes, there is anatomy. I can give you anatomy lesson in 5 minutes. Everything you need to know. It's not something that and still don't know, which amazes me, how little we as women know about our bodies, how little men know about prolonging pleasure. not just becoming erect and having an orgasm. That's a more faster and natural process for them, but how to be a good lover, how to sustain this energy, how to um, be present. But for women, it's literally anatomy. Well, most of our uh, it most of our pleasure centers are inside. That's another thing, right? And most of us were shamed about exploring those centers, so that's an additional level. Yes. um
And but
so
what
that,
you
yeah,
oh, sorry to interrupt, but I was just going to say, and what you said too, that it's there's a physical layer,
yeah,
but also an energetic layer.
yes, thank you. Then the energetic layer is that according to tantric practices, techniques and philosophy, um, female sexual center is not just physically introverted, it's energetically introverted. So for a woman uh, to connect, what's needed is feeling safe and relaxed. If she is feeling, it's not even just the body can do whatever body does, but if she's not feeling safe, and it's like a flower, you cannot force a flower to bloom. Right? It needs water, it needs time, it needs sun. So opening up slowly to let his energy enter, that's what energetically happening in a heart connected sex. For men, their sexual energy center or chakra, right, the second chakra, it's extroverted, so it's easier to express. It's just, it needs to be expressed, it needs to be received. So for men, the learning energetically how to be with their energy, it's always how to ground yourself and how to be safe for a woman, and how to slow down for her, because their speed is different. And it's the opposite for the heart chakra. The heart chakra in women is extroverted. The energy goes out more easily. We are givers. We can't wait to be received through, and it's an introverted for man. So the same process, but the opposite. So for women to learn how to be softer with their heart energy, how to be, how to offer it versus to force it into him, right? So for men, how to offer their sexuality so women can relax and kind of move toward him, not because if he moves too fast, what happens? It closes. If it happened, we closed, we closing sexually, but we might not indicate it. We might still be physically doing the act, right? We might still be physically with a man, and that creates dissonance, and that creates this disharmony when we engage in the physical acts, but energetically we're closed in that center. For men, again, the opposite with the heart. Does it make sense? I really loved it when I heard this whole analogy as a flower, and how it goes with the heart and the sexual center from my Tantra teacher, Leah Piper. That really struck me. That's it. I couldn't find words for that. Here it is. That was my experience.
I think you explained it beautifully. And, for myself, when I reflect again on the Cosmo upbringing and all of those things, they never said key to intimacy. Well, do you feel safe with your partner? It said put a donut on him.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
Mm-hmm.
never about how do you feel? Take an ice cube and put it on him. Or, it was always this kind of outward sexualization
Yeah.
versus any connection with, well, how do you really feel? And not to blame Cosmo for everything, but I also think so growing up, there was the huge wave of I don't know what it's called, like free sexuality or just
Mm-hmm.
freedom of sexual expression, which on the one hand is great, but I think what it taught my generation was just have sex with anybody because you can. And why wouldn't you? Because you're free and liberated. And yet, if you're not connected to your body and how your body actually feels, or you're not tuning in, then great, you can sleep with people, but you're not going to feel fulfilled. And that's how I felt for quite some time. And I worked with Zhanna, I'll share. That's how I know her. And I came with this issue, and it was so funny because what we discovered through our work, it was really about connecting to the desire of my physical body that I was like mentally and emotionally overriding simply because I wanted something else from my mind, but my body was telling me a whole nother story. And I think this wisdom, this connection has been really lost and sort of overridden by this modern sex advice that we find. And even like the modern women's liberation movement has, I think, really contributed to this story that we can and should just sleep with other people as if we are men, which we're not. We are not. And energetically, sexually, our pleasure isn't derived the same way that theirs is. And I think when we don't honor that, first of all, when we don't know that, like you said, many women, we don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost something we need to be taught. And then we don't honor it. Well,
Yeah.
of course, we're not going to feel satisfied. And then we need to get the donut and the
Yeah.
handcuffs and which again, there's no great if you want to do all of that, but that should be like an overflow of the passion and intimacy that already exists.
Right on point. Yes. This is a huge issue for a lot of women of any age, actually. And I worked with women starting. My youngest client was 18. My oldest client so far 75. I love it.
Amazing.
Love it. And I see the similarities. And being a pleaser and being externally oriented, that's how most people are built. It's just we need to know that, we need to honor that too. But it doesn't work if we are not learning, if we're not connecting with our bodies, we don't know what we want, but also if we're not communicating. You're right, this is what you said, that was beautiful. So yes, huge part of my work with women is discovering, for them, learning how to discover their desires. It's so many times when I first would ask a woman, or her partner would ask during our exercises, during the sessions, what do you want? They would just freeze. They would just, what? And we work with a very simple physical things. So just on a physical level, think of five senses. Right? What would feel good for you right now? What would feel pleasant? And what many women discover is the first difficulty is to just get out of your head and get in your body. And just okay, I don't even know how my feet feel right now. Right? Oh, I'm so tense and I didn't even notice. So for women, it's a real struggle often. Men typically, not always, but typically men have a better connection with their body. And that's also, it's a natural way. That's how we build. So for women, once again, we need time even to connect to our body and to feel what do we want, what we want, what the body wants. But then another layer, we are pleasers, right? To say that, that's a whole different story. Because what if he wouldn't like it? What if he would refuse? Right? How would I look? How would I sound with this desire? Oh no, something's wrong with this desire. Then I'll just dismiss it. So that another part, that's what we do during my sessions. We learn how to communicate. And oh my God, only by doing that, only by shifting that, the whole dynamic in relationship shifts. When the women learn how to communicate, connect to their desires and communicate their desires, men couldn't be happier. I heard it so many times when they like, thanks God, finally there is something to do. There is something I understand. So it's really funny. Sometimes we have really funny moments, and we have moments with tears when people realize how much it was holding them back, when she's trying to please him, but all he wants is to give to her. So that's the dynamic. Yes.
I can share for myself. I remember you asked me something, oh, well, what would you desire? And I said an answer just very quickly. And you asked, I don't know if you asked, are you sure? Or like take another minute with that. And I reflected another moment or tune in with my body. I tuned in and my body was like, no. It's so funny because it was like just this really ingrained habit almost. In my mind, I'm like, sure, there's no problem. Why would there be a problem? We'll just do that. And then I checked in with my body, and my body's going, absolutely not. No, that's not what I want. And it was very eye-opening for me how often I probably rush past and almost overpower these signals that my physical body is giving me about what is okay and what's not okay. And then
Yeah.
I'll share, about expressing your desires. Well, it's very vulnerable, kind of like what you said, that we hide behind things. I think because expressing desires, very vulnerable state. And I know in my head, I'll hear like, oh, it's too much. I'm asking for too much, or that's greedy, or that's selfish. And I think that goes to what you were saying, like about being pleasers as women, that we have a natural caretaking ability. But specifically in those intimate relationships, we need to allow ourselves to be caretaken and verbalize what we need versus thinking always, what do they need? What do I need to give them?
Absolutely. And that's a part of a survival strategy for women, to be pleasers, right? And that again, something that natural. When you said natural, there are many natural things, but in order to have uh, both body and soul and heart connection, yes, we sometimes we need to even overcome some instinctual things, right? And that is work. That is back to what you said. How come we need to learn it? So many people have resistance about that. It's an art. How come you need to learn how to draw? How come you need to learn how to write? Right? It's an art. The name of book about Tantra from my Tantra teacher. It's called Tantra, the Art of Conscious Loving. It's an art, and it's some cultures they learned it. And that communication is part of it. How to communicate in a way that makes you connected, feel connected, but also knowing. Oh, you said you answered first from your head, and then you connected with your body, and then oh, my body wants something different. But even knowing, for men, sometimes knowing that they need to give a woman this space can be a huge breakthrough. So yes, we need to learn those things. The best man can be clueless about it. They function differently. Every person function differently. Yes, there are some common things for women and their sexuality, men and their sexuality, but personality also has to be taken it, but the common thing for women is they need time to connect, more time to connect to their body, to connect to their desires. So part of this work of learning tantric connection, for example, is for women, for men to hold that space without freaking out, because because men are fixers, and that works great at work, but it doesn't work so great with women, with creating a safe space for a woman. So that's really interesting, and for me to see how it works each time. Such a simple thing as teaching partners, but especially men, how to listen without trying to fix, but how to hold the container. How huge of a difference does it make?
What I'm also
And
hearing, I'm hearing when you're explaining that, it's like at a fundamental level, we need to learn we're not all the same. We don't function the
yeah.
same. And here are some tips about how different sexes function. And it's like that we just assume, oh, I'm like this way, they must be like this way. I mean, as women, we do that as well, right? With men, we just think, oh, well, if I am sleeping with him and he probably wants a relationship too. He probably, whatever the story is. And then we realize, nope, it was just physical. They don't really care. They're not interested at all. And then we feel maybe like betrayed or, you know, a little bit heartbroken, things like that. Well, on the other side, men are making their own assumptions. You know, they're operating with their map of themselves, thinking, okay, this map really applies to all these other people. And it's almost like we need to learn, no, no, no. That's your
We
map.
need to stand out. Yes, for women, the best recommendation that I've heard of in terms of dating with the intention to meet a life partner, right? That's very important. What intention do you have? Is to wait with sex and get to know. And it makes sense for me as a tantric practitioner, because men are slower in the heart, women are slower in the sexual chakra. So yes, there is a dissonance, and yes, it's a little bit of who what's the competition. Someone has to win. This is a game. Dating is a game. It's
Yes.
very different from being in a relationship, right? So yes, waiting for, but if you listen, it's not even has to come from here. If a woman really listen, right, then that she might hear her body saying, oh, I to be really be open, I need to trust here a little bit more, or I need to connect a little bit more, and do not skip it and just stand, honor it and communicate that.
It's funny, when you said that, it made me think also about, you know, your intuition, because a lot of times that intuition will be the quiet voice from your heart, or the quiet voice that's so easy to override. And I feel that way too, you know, meeting people. I'm dating, so I talk about dating, but even relationships, I think intuitively you know, but do you listen? Do you trust?
Yes.
Because your intuition is most likely telling you, and I've had plenty of instances where my intuition has told me one thing or another, and I've somehow managed, oh, probably not. It doesn't seem that way. And then sure enough, you know, I later find out, oh, yes, that was correct. Wow, so fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, in those first days of connection, months of connection, um, that's our mind will create lots of different stories. Either why this man is not for good for us, or why he's perfect. So grounding, being in your body, being in your intuition, being in your heart, belly as a, for those who know yoga and chakra, belly is a power center. Sometimes we say we have this gut feeling, right? So that's where it's coming from. So this is a part of listening to your body. Physical sensations, but they connected to something. They are connected. um but also standing on, not being shy about it, and being really clear with men. Yes, I'm looking for relationship, for this type of relationship. Yes, I'm not willing to rush. And giving him a choice, right? Giving him a choice, because he needs time here too. So this is but it has to come from a woman. That's my personal opinion, and the opinion of many experts. One of them I absolutely adore, Alison Armstrong. She's a relationship coach who did some she has some books and some audiobooks about dating and relationship. um, so one of her main points is that women not women need to talk about their desires. They need to talk about what they want, being very straight from the very first date. That will save you a lot of trouble, because men are givers. Healthy men, mature men are givers. And if a man sees something that he can give to you potentially, that will get him excited. And if he doesn't, then he's not the right man for you, if he cannot give you what you need. When what women do, unfortunately, they often change their desires according to a person in front of them.
I've never done that ever. No, I'm just kidding. I'm guilty, very, very guilty. Also say being somebody who's very like intuitive and sensitive to energies, it's easy to let the external be louder than the internal. And so
Yeah.
it's learning how to turn up the volume knob inside, and also like we already talked about, honoring that, and learning that, like you said, it's almost a relief for men. If it's a good fit, it's going to be a relief for them to know
Mhm.
what it is that you want.
Yes, absolutely. And I heard that many times too. Most men are confused about what women want, but I don't blame them, because women are not saying what they want.
We're
Sometimes they
so
don't
confused
know,
about
but
what we want.
still expecting to guess. That's the hugest pitfall. This is not something that definitely not working, and we keep doing that. We keep doing it all the time.
Yeah, we want
Yeah.
our mind to be read, our desires to be read, even though we don't even really know what they are because we
Uh,
haven't taken the time. So, although we don't know what they are, we expect the other person to know. And then
yeah,
so
that
well,
is not a good way to build a mature, healthy, pleasurable relationship. It just doesn't work this way.
so when you work with these people, you said like 18 to 75, what sorts of outcomes do you see in working with them?
Say it again.
What kinds of outcomes? We're kind of winding down. So last question here is,
Yeah.
like, you're working with these people from 18 to 75 years
Yeah.
old. You're working with individuals, but you're also working with couples. What
Yeah.
what do you see? What changes? I mean, we've sort of touched on parts of it, but what are the biggest changes that you see for them?
Uh, I the biggest changes that well how the biggest changes that I see is the way the way how they start communicating with each other. It's almost that like they come to me and they learn a completely new language that they didn't have before. I think I would put it in the first And because this is huge. You cannot address something that you cannot name or cannot see even. It's so connected that this idea even of being connected to your desire, right? That's one thing shifted dating for you, right? So um, learning a language, how to communicate your desires, how to communicate your connect to your body, communicate your desires to your partner, and how to feel stay within the boundaries uh, and not doing something that you cannot do wholeheartedly. It's an art, but this art that happens in communication, verbal communication, but also non-verbal communication. So when I say they learn a new language, it's not just verbal. For that, they that would be, even though the verbal communication makes a huge shift for many couples. But what does it mean to learn a nonverbal communication? Part of what I do, I teach touch. So sometimes after 20 or 30 years together, people finally starting to touch each other with presence and with intention and with love, and learn how to translate it through touch. That itself, that shifts everything. So that's I feel like I'm
No, that's
can you repeat the question?
no, that's, I was thinking that's like a spiritual awakening for these
It
clients
is.
right then
It
and
is.
there. That's a spiritual awakening to understand that you haven't been present, or that you haven't been translating love through touch and then doing it consciously. I mean, it's reminding me of the title of the book that you mentioned, The Art. Okay, we covered the art part of conscious sexuality. I
Loving.
forget if that,
Yeah.
but it's
Conscious
conscious.
loving.
Yeah, because are we there? Or we checked out?
The huge issue, the very common issue, is a performance anxiety in both men and women. And when they learn the skills of conscious loving, of conscious communication, conscious touches, that issue just disappears. So we not per se specifically address the performance anxiety, for example. We disappear it by learning those skills, and that's what's happening. That's the outcome. Most difficulties, most issues that people come to me, which is uneven desire, inability to have orgasm, performing anxiety, um, they just dissolve when we address it from that angle. When people learn how to be present, how to relax, how to trust, how to be in their body. And those are yoga like techniques, but there's also the techniques where we use very specific language and very specific positioning sometimes of the hands. Tantra is yoga. Tantra is practical.
I mean, this is huge, what you're saying. This is huge because I can see a lot of parallels. So I study in a spiritual lineage. So we approach a lot of things through spirit, and we say the same things. When you are connected with spirit, or when you're connected with your true self, it's not that you need to fix the mask or even sometimes heal the mask. It will just disappear because you're connected with that light. And so what you're saying, I mean, it's like these people, they learn how to just simply connect with
Yeah,
themselves, and all of the gaps, the holes of the disconnect, they're filled with the light and the presence now. And so there isn't space for the issue. It's like, I think
absolutely.
I think of modern psychology. Again, this is not to put any of these things down. They have a place, all of them. But, modern psychology would want you to fixate on the issue and obsess on the issue and just like ruminate mentally on the issue. And I know for myself, you still have the issue. And sometimes it gets worse because now all you're doing is looking at the issue. And so what you're saying, it's such a huge key because rather than fixate on the issue, quote unquote, because is it really the issue? The issue is actually this disconnect that people have. And so when they're connected and then also able to connect with their partner, there's no more issue.
Absolutely, exactly that. And there is another one, another aspect.
More? We just solved everybody's sex issues.
Yeah.
Thank you, Zhanna. We've solved it for you. But there's more she's telling me. So let's hear.
Do you remember the last time we saw each other? I believe we talked about that. How when you got traumatized and your body were involved, such as in a sexual trauma, the only way that I believe and tantric approach believe it can be healed is through the body. If you were touched unconsciously, conscious touch will heal you. So that is another way to disappear even a deeper, that is a way to disappear even the deepest traumas for some people. And that's what I love about this approach. I really respect and like talk therapy. I think it can resolve many issues. It can be healing. But there are some aspects that talk therapy just cannot approach. And those are anything that has to do with the body. And sexuality, intimacy, it's a physical, it's here. It's so, yeah.
I think of it, it's like, we all have so many aspects to it ourselves. We could think of it like spirit, soul, body, mind, emotions, body. There's lots of ways to break it down. And so from my understanding, like talk therapy works with the mind. And sometimes that's what we need. But sometimes, you would come see an energy healer because you need to work with spirit, or even tantra to work with spirit. And then sometimes we need to work with the body. So if we limit ourselves in any of those, like we sort of just say, nope, this is it, I'm just going to choose that over and over and over again. It's like we're limiting the wholeness that we can come to. And so knowing, maybe it's time for me to explore this other space, which I have not yet explored, to see if it can help bring me into balance. I know it's so interesting. I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard that, at least in America, we're actually having less sex than ever before. And most people are having like performance anxiety issues. I know many people have like porn addictions and things like that. And I think this is at its core, what you're talking about, that conscious sexuality and receiving and giving conscious touch. I think that that's a huge piece of what's going on culturally for us right now, or what we're lacking.
People are touch deprived. In what makes me very sad sometimes, they touch deprived even when they live in a union, when they married. It's mind-blowing. And it's really one of the happiest moments that I have during my sessions is when the people come to me, a couple come to me, and they start trying to talk about things first. We always talk at first and time to time, but then the simplest tantric exercise, such as sitting in front of each other, holding hands, looking at each other's eyes, and connecting the breath, in front of me, it dissolved everything. After a few minutes of doing that, it's floating. So emotions start moving. Heart is opening. It there is no need for words anymore. That's what this energetic connection does. It just creates this flow, and healing is happening right there. Sometimes with tears, sometimes with laughter, sometimes just with this, wow, I haven't looked in your eyes for ages. I haven't held your hands like this without going, like moving, looking somewhere else, like just being present to each other. So this is a tool, this is a healing tool right here. For singles, there are lots of practices that we can do with ourselves, loving ourselves, our body. That's a huge thing. When we learn to do that, then we can be present to our partner. Then we can ask for what we want. And then we can say, no, I don't want that. But can you give me this? And be okay with any answer, because we learn how to honor our body. Therefore, we encourage our partner to honor their body too. So that's how healthy connection happens, when we honor each other, and when we honor each other's no. And another, I remember we were going through that, but the way to receive a no in conscious communication is always, thank you for taking care of yourself, because no is an act of taking care of yourself.
I love it so much. I feel like all of our listeners have just learned so much. If you want to connect with Zhanna, learn more about the work that she does, her information is below in the link. So please check her out. She's wonderful. And it's just been so great chatting with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Julie. It was a pleasure.
All right. Take care.